Hi, Daphne. How are you?
Mhm. Hi, nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. I absolutely loved your documentary. So first of all, thank you for making it.
Oh,
Um, yeah,
great. Thank you so much.
of course. So this whole thing really started with the movie Carrie. But what was your first Stephen King experience?
Well, my first Stephen King experience was through literature because I read The Shining like when I was 10. And it's quite funny because I was like this huge reader, reading everything I could find. And my father gave me The Shining. And funny anecdote, at the time I read The Shining, he was working night shift in a hotel. So that was kind of interesting, the having this, reading this book while my father was doing basically Jack Torrance job. So yeah.
Um, and what about his work do you find personally so captivating?
I think it's the way he writes characters because I think they are particularly interesting because you can have um, you can follow one character's point of view and understand that this person is not like the best person you can find in the world. There are so many layers that it's interesting to see how balanced Stephen King is when he's writing character. You don't have like this black and white vision. It's more like in the gray zone all the time, and I think it's very interesting in his work. Yeah.
I agree. I agree that grayness with the characters is definitely something that I find very interesting.
Yeah.
Um, And there's also something about his work that just keeps us coming back and revisiting it over and over again. So I was wondering what made you revisit his work enough to create a documentary about it?
Well, I've read like all of his books and started at a very young age. And at the same time, I was watching all the adaptations. And I think it was perhaps at the same time that Dr. Sleep was in theater that I got the feeling that I really wanted to make this documentary, but to hear a little bit about the filmmakers and how they work on the films and how they translate the book on screen. So it's really something that I was wondering about, and I thought that it could be great to have a documentary with the director's point of view. Yeah.
Nice, nice. And that's definitely a unique take on his work, based on other documentaries and whatnot. So that was very interesting.
No, thanks.
Um, I also couldn't help but notice that Stephen King himself is not actually in the documentary, being interviewed. So I was wondering why not include him in this?
Well, actually, I wanted to have the director's point of view, and having Stephen King in it would have felt like if, having Stephen King talking about adaptation is in itself a documentary. So putting King with all the directors would have been like putting two completely different documentary together and try to put something that doesn't really fit. I really wanted to have their point of view and some kind of external point of view on his work. So if he's in the documentary, it's not the same, and the directors wouldn't have the same freedom to talk.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Um, and obviously being a filmmaker yourself, what was it like interviewing other filmmakers about their adaptations?
Well, I love interviewing directors because it's so thrilling to see how passionate they are about their work. And when you are talking to to directors like Taylor Hackford, for example. He's done Dolores Claiborne like almost 30 years ago, and he's talking about the film with the same passion, you know. It feels like he made the film like last year, you know. And it's something that I really love to talk with them, because it's always surprising, always amazing to have this human connection. And at the same time, it's like having this small masterclass for yourself, you know, this private moment talking with someone who created uh, great films, because all the directors I got the chance to speak to made so many great films.
Was there anything that you personally are taking away from your interviews?
Well, especially the human connection, because you can see that all of them were really excited to talk about Stephen King, and had a lot of great things to say, and it was so interesting because they really took the time to dig uh, Stephen King stories and Stephen King material. So yeah, it's really something that I will keep in mind.
Nice, nice. And yeah, I loved the whole documentary. But the introduction and the conclusion were just especially captivating to me. So what inspired you to not only bookend the documentary with this almost fictional tribute, but also like what went into picking out the specific Easter eggs that went into it?
Yeah, that was a huge work, because we really wanted to do something quite different, you know, not just having talking heads, and which is fine, because I made a lot of documentaries that are talking heads only, but we really wanted to give the audience the feeling that people were entering into Stephen King universe. It's something that we really wanted to have in this film. And so we really went completely into it. We shot in Maine. We got great actors in the fictional introduction, like James Caan and Jeffrey Deman, Alexandra Paul, Amy Irving, so many great persons actually who accepted to be a part of it. And it was something also, since I really wanted to speak just with filmmakers, you know, just with directors, I mean, it's something that I thought was interesting to have this small fictional introduction, because it allowed us to have some of the actors present in the documentary as well, and acting, you know. So I thought it was quite, it was challenging to do it, I must admit, but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And it was really fun as a viewer to pick out the different Easter eggs and like what story those came from. So thank you for that little treasure hunt.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was the idea, a little bit to hide a lot of Easter eggs. And I reread every Stephen King novel, you know, just to find things that are a little bit, you know, different or difficult to find sometimes. But yeah, I had with the team a great pleasure doing that. It was very fun.
Was there anything that you explored in the documentary, either through the interviews or your own research, that didn't make the final cut, but you wish did?
Oh yeah, a lot of things actually, because at the end we had something like 40 hours of interviews, and we are making a movie that should not be longer than 2 hours, and we are like, okay, it's gonna be difficult sometimes, and we have to cut things. So we decided to have a book aside, so we will publish a book with the full length interviews, and so people will have the possibility to read it and to see a little bit of the content that we had to remove from the film. So yeah.
That's awesome. Is that something that we can look forward to soon, or is that still a little ways off?
Yeah, it's still in the pipes right now, but yeah, it should be. I think in 6 months or so we will have more informations about that. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, when you were putting all of this together, was there anything that really surprised you about the adaptations or about Stephen King's work in general?
I think it's about the way directors, some of them discovered King while making the adaptation. I think some of for sure, a lot of directors knew very much Stephen King and made a lot of adaptations, but some of them didn't know King before going into their film. And so I think it's interesting, talking to Scottics, for example, who didn't know very well the Stephen King universe at first and his vision on it. So yeah, I think it's something that is quite appealing as well.
That was cool. That was cool. The thing that surprised me the most was his connection with George Romero. I live close to Pittsburgh, so all of George Romero's films have been a big influence on my life and career. So it was nice to see that little almost hometown connection. So
Yeah, absolutely. We really wanted to talk about George Romero as well because the two had a great relationship, and we thought that we should include George in the documentary, and so we were thrilled to be able to speak with John Harrison and Craig Nicotero, who works a lot with him. So yeah.
um just my final question before I let you go. As a director yourself and a Stephen King fan, is there a Stephen King story that you want to adapt?
Well, if I had to choose, I would say Jumaki because it's a novel that's never made it to the screen, and I think it's a great one, very visual, So I think it's a novel that I really love to see in theaters. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool too, especially with all the remakes that are coming out. It'd be nice to see something that hasn't hit the screen yet, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Something fresh like Jumaki or, for example, Joyland. I really enjoyed that one too. And seeing it on the big screen, it could be great. It could
For
be
sure.
great.
For sure. All right. So yeah, those are all of my questions. But if there's something else that you wanted to add, feel free.
No, I think we're good. But yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome.
I'm so glad you like the film.
I did very much so. So thank you. And thank you for chatting about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. You have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. You too. Have a great day.